The tunnel entrance on the morning of April 3rd, 1966 was 18 inches wide and dropped straight down into a darkness, so complete that the flashlight in my left hand seemed to make it worse rather than better by showing me exactly how much of it there was. My name is Michael Patrick Sheehan, Specialist 4th Class, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division, United States Army, and I was 20 years old when I lowered myself into that hole. And I am 78 years old now. And what I found 40 feet beneath that ground has never appeared in any history book or any declassified document or any official account of the tunnel war beneath Cu Chi province. And the reason it has never appeared is not because anyone forgot it, but because what I found that morning raised questions about decisions already made and money already spent and lives already lost, that nobody at the level where those decisions had been made wanted examined in the spring of 1966. I had been a tunnel rat for 3 months by that morning, which means I was a man of small physical stature, 5 feet 6 and 140 pounds, selected because the tunnels had been built for Vietnamese bodies and most American bodies did not fit inside them. And I had cleared 11 complexes by April and had been in underground contact twice. And I was not a man who was easily surprised by anything he found beneath that ground. And I tell you that because it is the only way to convey the weight of what happened when my flashlight found something on the wall of that passage that stopped me so completely that I sat in that tunnel for several minutes before I could process what I was looking at. It was a map, but not the kind of map I had ever found underground before. The complex we were working that morning was designated TC 14 inches, the operational records of the 25th Division, located approximately 3 kilometers northeast of Cu Chi town in dense scrub vegetation that defoliation operations had already stripped to gray stumps and bare red earth, and the first 2 levels had been consistent with every other complex I had worked, living quarters and storage areas and a medical station showing signs of recent occupation but cleared before we arrived. And I had been underground for approximately 40 minutes, working my way along a downward sloping passage toward the 3rd level when my flashlight hit that wall. And everything I thought I understood about what was beneath that ground changed in a single moment. The map was large and detailed and professionally rendered on heavy drafting paper, mounted on a wooden frame, fixed directly into the clay wall, and it showed not just the complex I was inside, but the entire Cu Chi tunnel network, the complete system drawn to scale with connections and complexes and infrastructure extending across an area significantly larger than anything in any briefing document I had ever been shown. And I want you to understand what that meant in practical terms, which is that the operational picture every American soldier and every American commander in that province had been working from was a partial picture at best and a deliberately incomplete one at worst. And the men who had been fighting and dying above that ground had been doing so without a true understanding of the scale of what was beneath their feet. But the map was not the most important thing on that wall. Attached to the lower right corner with wire staples was a document of approximately 20 pages. And even before I began reading it, I could see that it was not in Vietnamese and not in any Asian language, but in English. And I read enough of it in that passage by flashlight to form an understanding of its nature that has not changed in 58 years of thinking about it. And what it was, written in the specific dry and precise language of an engineering assessment, was a technical document describing the construction methodology and material specifications of the Chu Chi Tunnel network, and the sections I was able to read most clearly described construction techniques and structural approaches that were not consistent with what American intelligence had assessed the Viet Cong to be capable of producing independently, and the document contained references to external technical assistance that had contributed to the design and construction of specific structural elements of the network, references that suggested a level of outside engineering involvement in the building of those tunnels that was not part of any briefing I had ever received, and that directly contradicted the official American assessment of how the Chu Chi tunnels had been built and by whom. I photographed everything with the camera I carried for documentation purposes, 12 photographs of the map and 8 of the document pages I could access, and I marked the location as precisely as I could calculate it and extracted from that tunnel and reported directly to my company commander, Captain James Whitfield from Nashville, Tennessee, a good officer who listened to my full account with the focused attention of a man who understands that what he is hearing matters. And he pulled me from the rotation for the rest of that day and had me write everything down in detail and surrender the camera immediately. And later that afternoon, a military intelligence officer whose name I was never given arrived at our position and asked me very specific questions about the document and about the references to external technical assistance in particular, asking me to describe those references in precise detail 3 separate times in a way that told me he understood exactly what I was describing and exactly why it mattered. I was told that the photographs and my report were being forwarded to Division Intelligence for assessment and that I would be informed of any follow-up requirements. And 3 days later, Whitfield called me in and told me that the photographs had come back assessed as inconclusive due to image quality, and that my written report had been filed as part of the ongoing intelligence assessment of the tunnel network. And he told me this, looking at a point slightly to the left of my face rather than directly at me, in the way that a man looks when he is delivering a message he did not write and does not entirely believe. And I asked him what had happened to the original map and document and whether a follow-up penetration had been ordered to recover them. And he told me that TC-14 had been destroyed by demolition teams the previous day as part of ongoing denial operations in that sector. TC-14 had been demolished the day after I reported what was inside it. The map was gone, the document was gone, the photographs were inconclusive. My written report was filed. And the Chu Chi Tunnel Network continued to be described in every briefing I attended for the remainder of my service as an indigenous construction achievement built by local Viet Cong labor using materials and techniques available within South Vietnam, which was the same description that had been in every briefing before April 3rd, 1966, and which the material I had found in that passage had directly and specifically contradicted. I have spent 58 years asking myself whether I am certain enough of what I read in that tunnel to say what I am saying now. And the answer I keep arriving at is that certainty is not the point, because the photographs existed and the written report existed, and the decision to demolish TC-14 before a follow-up recovery operation was conducted was made by someone above Captain Whitfield's level, and that decision ensured that the original materials could never be independently assessed. And the question of why that decision was made when it was made has never been answered in any document. I have been able to locate in 58 years of looking, and I have looked with the specific persistence of a man who understands that the answer matters, not as a historical footnote, but as an accounting owed to every soldier who went into the ground above those tunnels without being told the full truth of what had been built beneath them. Whitfield died in 1987, and he never spoke publicly about April 3rd, 1966, as far as I know. And I never asked him directly in the years after the war, because there are things between men who serve together that do not need to be spoken, to be understood. And what his eyes had told me the day he delivered that assessment communicated everything about what he had understood and what he had been unable to change. And I have spent 58 years with the same understanding and the same inability to change it. And I have decided that staying quiet about it no longer makes sense when I am 78 years old and the last man alive who was in that passage on the morning of April 3rd, 1966. There are 12 photographs sitting in a division intelligence file somewhere that were assessed as inconclusive in the spring of 1966. And I do not believe they were inconclusive, and I have never believed it. And the men who made that assessment knew what was on those photographs as clearly as I knew what was on that wall. And the men who fought and bled and died above the Chu Chi Tunnel network across the years of that war deserved a government that was honest with them about what had been built beneath that ground and who had helped build it. And I do not believe they received that honesty, and I believe the proof of it has been sitting in a filing system since 1966 behind an assessment of image quality that was never about the images at all. I found something 40 feet underground that changed the picture of that entire campaign. And the evidence was photographed and reported and then buried under a demolition charge and classified as inconclusive. And I am 78 years old, and I am done letting that be the end of the story, because the men who died above those tunnels deserve someone to keep asking what was on those photographs and why the answer has been inconclusive for 58 years. And I am still here, and I am still asking, and I will keep asking until I am not